up, nerds? Welcome to another episode of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast, a weekly nerd culture podcast that discusses the culture through various segments. Of course, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Twitter and Instagram are at The Nerds Podcast. You can check out our website, thenerdspodcast.com, and email us at thenerdsyou'relooking4@gmail.com. My name, of course, is Patrick Kuhn, alongside my co-host, as always, that Tyler Hunt. How's it going, man?
It's going pretty well, man. How's it going, Pat Attack?
Don't call me Pat Attack.
It's a thing now.
All right, so this is an extra special episode. For those that have been listening for a while, we go to Indy Pop Con every year, and we're actually recording live on the podcast stage at Indy Pop Con. But it's also extra special because we have our good friend Tony from Geeking in Indiana with us. How's it going, man?
Pretty good, Pat Attack. How you doing, man?
I thought we were leaving Evansville. I thought we agreed that Pat Attack wasn't going to leave Evansville.
Pat Attack goes wherever you go, man.
I hate that nickname so much. But like a few episodes ago, I embraced it, and it just got worse. I thought it would get better.
I know. I think that your thought was, well, if I embrace it, he's going to stop because
that's exactly
I show
what I
that
thought.
It won't bother me.
That
but
never happens. That
I saw
never
right
works.
through that.
Yeah, I leaned into it, and it did not work at all. It just kind of made it worse. So what's going on, man?
Not much. Happy to be here at Indy Pop Con. Set up a table, doing a couple panels, doing your podcast today. So life's pretty good.
Yeah. So of course we're happy to have you on. We've been wanting to have you on for a couple of years now. So for our listeners that don't know, or anybody that's here that doesn't know, what is Geeking in Indiana?
All right, Geeking in Indiana started in 2010 as a resource for geeks in the state of Indiana. And I really need to watch those S's on this microphone.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a resource for geeks, telling people about upcoming conventions, local geek shops like comic shops, hobby stores, places like that. We've done movie reviews. We'll just do all sorts of stuff. Over the past few months, we've started pulling back a bit, going back to just the core. Here's upcoming conventions, here's comic shops, and we still do a podcast.
So what's your podcast about?
The podcast is the Indiana Geeking Podcast, where we bring on local creators, geeks, just people of interest in the state of Indiana to talk about what they do, what they enjoy about being a geek in this state, things like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. It never occurred to me to start something that you're like plugging other people's stuff. That's pretty cool.
We're too selfish to do that. We do it once a year at Indy Pop Con, and that's about it.
I started with that, but then it's just kind of evolved over the past 4 years of random episodes into that, because one can talk about themselves only so much, and it's hard for me to get a steady co-host on to talk about things like movies and things like that. So this way I can just reach out to people. The last couple episodes have been local bands like the Shake-Ups, which is a pop culture band, 5 Year Mission, which does Star Trek music, both of which are located in the vendor hall. But interviewing bands like that, I've interviewed cosplayers, prop builders, comic and book creators, just full 9 yards.
Yeah, so I think that we kind of have the perfect setup because I never get tired of talking about myself. And Tyler's the perfect co-host because I'm just waiting for him to stop talking so I can talk about myself again.
Yeah, we're laughing, but it's actually like very true.
It's funny because it's true. That's how it works.
So it seems like, so you have a lot of different people on your podcast, and you obviously promote a lot of different people. Because nerd culture is so expansive, how do you deal with, like, if somebody comes on and either you don't know that much about what they're into, or you're not that interested in what they're into? How do you deal with that?
I have worked retail for so many years, I can fake interest in just about anything. But honestly, if it's something I don't know that much about, that helps spur the conversation.
Sure.
I ask the questions. I reach out to folks on social media going, hey, I'm going to be talking to this person that writes books on geek knitting. What would you like to know about that?
Sure.
This is hopefully going to be a future guest, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so it sounds like you're a lot more professional and prepared than we are.
Tomato.
Yeah.
Some say professional. Some look at me and go, he has a green goatee. And there's a fez in front of him. What do you mean professional?
Okay, so I'm glad that you brought that up. So what's the deal with the hat?
The fez?
Yes.
I bought my first fez at Gen Con a few years ago. There's a vendor out of Long Beach, California called Fezarama. and they make high-quality fezzes. I've always got a kick out of fezzes, and so I told them their first year here, you make one I really like, it's going to become part of what I wear to conventions and for the blog.
Sure.
The next year he made a fez I really liked. So that's the black fez you see if you ever look at pictures of me online. I'm very fond of selfies. Hashtag
I've noticed. Yeah. I follow you on Instagram.
But I got that from them, and then last year they came out with this red fez for the 50th Gen Con, and so now I have 2 fezzes.
My dad wears the fez, but he's a Shriner.
I was going to say, does he have a little car too?
Yeah, he does. He has like a little motorcycle thing. Have you ever met a Shriner that mistakes you for a Shriner?
Not with the black fez, even though once I did get mistaken for a Doctor Who cosplayer.
Gotcha. I guess fezzes go deeper than the Shrine, but just that's what I know about them, and I also know, like, you know, my dad's a Shriner. It's kind of culty, so I see it, and yeah, I don't know. But it's interesting because I've seen other people in nerd culture that wear the fezzes too, so I didn't know if it was just a piece of nerd culture that I'm missing or what.
Yeah, it's a funny hat. Geeks and nerds like funny outfits, funny hats, things like that. So
Pat's wearing a pretty funny hat today too.
No, see, that's the thing. Like,
is that for Purdue?
No, it's Pittsburgh Pirates. That
because the visual humor really works well in an audio medium.
So I love hats. I love wearing hats. I'm always wearing a hat if I'm not at work. But I think you just take it to a whole new level with your collection of hats. So I was just curious if there was a story behind it.
I just like it.
That's
Cool.
kind of like nerd culture summed up, right? We do all this because we just like it.
Nailed it.
Yep.
So is there anything coming up that you would like to plug? Do you have any plans other than the nerd knitting thing?
Well, I mean, pretty much right now, everything has to do with the local conventions. We've got Indy Pop Con this weekend. I've got a few episodes I'm hoping to record while I'm here, so those will be coming out for the podcast over the next few weeks as I can get around to editing them. I'm also getting back into visiting more of the local comic shops. There's a couple places in East Washington at Washington Square that I need to visit. Just a couple places just around Indianapolis itself that I still haven't documented. I need to go around and do those. But, I mean, we've got this convention happening. In July, I've got a small convention happening in Newcastle that I'm a quote-unquote guest at because that's my hometown. So
Yeah.
And they find it amusing that somebody from that town has a blog, has a podcast, can talk to kids about it, but has also had a background working for Disney, has had a background working in Hollywood and movie effects, has had a background just all this, helping form Star Wars costuming groups, things like that. So
there's a couple of things I want to talk to you about that you just mentioned, but I just want to I could see Tyler out of the corner of my eye. He's just kind of like, just not really paying a whole lot of attention. And then you said Disney, and he was like, what? So you two need to start talking about Disney.
No,
Go.
I'm a huge Disney nerd, but so you lived in California. You said you went to Disneyland, you worked in FX and all sorts of other stuff. What brought you back to Indiana?
Well, I moved to California in 2000 just for a change of pace. I was in my early 20s. I was just in a position where I could try something new. New does not mean better. California is expensive.
Yeah.
It is difficult to live in. It is hard to find a job. So after a few years of working in Hollywood was $10 an hour, working with toxic chemicals with no benefits.
Yeah.
That's the effects industry if you're just getting started. So yeah, I came back home where I had work, where I could get benefits, where I could get an apartment under $1,200, and went back that route. Then went back out there because my wife at the time was from out there. Just everything. That's when the economy started going in the toilet. Everything fell apart. I came back out to Indiana, and that's actually when the blog and all that got started, was back 2010 when I came back out here for the final time because, nope, I'm done. I'm back home. Home is not bad. It's got its rough parts, but hey, so does every place else. At least I'm not paying $950 for a studio apartment. So
Yeah, for sure. And I dabble in stand-up comedy, and so a lot of my friends who have done it have tried to go out to LA, and they say pretty much the exact same thing. It's hard to find a job. It's really, really expensive. And but apparently the stage time is really good out there, which I'd imagine would be the case. But so is there anything that you point to while you were out there, that you're like, if you get talking to somebody and like kind of like bragging a little bit, like I worked on that thing, on that movie? Is there anything that comes to your mind?
Well, the only film that, I worked on a couple of small projects. I worked on the suits for the live-action Tick series with Patrick Warburton.
Oh, cool.
Back in 2000. I did a little bit of work on Stephen King's Dreamcatcher, but the only thing that I really worked on, that the only proof I've got is I'm on the behind-the-scenes material if you get the 2-disc set for Blade 2. But I worked on the Reapers and Damaskinos on Blade 2, the foam latex makeup and the silicone gel makeup. And what's really amusing was I was working third shift on this film. So it's me and one other person in the studio running foam latex. My parents are bringing my brother out to Vegas for his 21st birthday. And so we're like 3 hours from Las Vegas. So I'm talking to the guy I'm working with that, I'm taking this weekend off to go see my family. It's like, oh, where are you from? Indiana. It's like, oh, where in Indiana are you from? So you start going through the whole thing about, I could break it down. It's like, no, I'm from near Indianapolis. Oh, where? Oh, it's a small town between Anderson and Muncie. Tony, where? Fine, wise guy. Shirley. Oh, did you go to Shenandoah or Eastern Hancock? Shenandoah. Oh, did you know this person and this person? Yeah, we had mutual friends. 2,200 miles away.
Yeah.
Only 2 people in the studio. We had mutual friends.
That's crazy. Whenever you work on a movie like that, and you said you work third shift, and it's just you and this one other guy, do you get the opportunity to like meet Guillermo del Toro?
No.
Bummer.
Oh, no. Well, correction. I didn't know it was Guillermo del Toro. He was sitting where I needed to put some stuff, and I said, "Oh, pardon me, sir. I need to move these pieces over here. Could you?" He's apologized, moved out of the way, and someone's like, "Did you just shove Guillermo del Toro out of the seat?" And I go, "He was in my way." But I did have the opportunity to work. The shop I worked at was Steve Johnson's XFX. Steve Johnson got his start. Let's see, I think he worked on The Howling, he worked on American Werewolf in London, or he worked on The Howling 2, American Werewolf in London. He sculpted all the ghosts in Ghostbusters.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
So it was kind of cool walking in and seeing Slimer hanging from the ceiling. The Puttermans, pieces from Virus, did restoration work on suits from Bicentennial Man. Not the best movie, beautiful suits.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, American Werewolf in London, that's some of the best, like, prosthetic work I've ever seen.
Well, he was actually kicking himself because I was given the opportunity to leave when one of my parts on Blade 2 was done. I was given the opportunity to go work at Rick Baker's on Men in Black 2. And then Steve asked me to work on the Damaskinos makeup, so I gave up the opportunity to go to Baker's to stay on at Steve's. Steve told me that if he knew that I was given the opportunity to go to Baker's, he would have cut me loose in a heartbeat because he didn't want it. Because he kept me for 3 extra weeks and cost me 4 months of extra work.
Oh wow!
But he didn't know. So and I didn't know any better. I work retail.
Yeah.
So it's like up to this point, I've worked retail, I've worked food service, I've never done effects. I don't know. It's you go from job to job and you don't stay at one place. So
how did you get into that?
Replica Prop Forum. It's an internet message board dedicated to movie prop replicators. Somebody on there put up a help wanted ad because they were doing licensed replicas of the original Battlestar Galactica blasters. And I had experience building garage kits, so I got signed on for that job. The job I was going to work in California at the time backed out on me. So when they found out I was unemployed and was going to have to wait 2 months for work, they brought me on to work in the archives, figuring I knew how to organize a stock room. I know how to organize the archives.
Sure.
And inventory and organize the archives. And, then they brought me on to work on the Tick. And then they had me do the Battlestar Galactica blasters. And they brought me back to work on the archives. Then Blade 2. Then 5 months of unemployment. Then archive Blade 2, do some work on Dreamcatcher. And then nothing. And then I moved back to Indiana. 3 months later, they tried calling me to work on Spider-Man 2. I'm already back in Indiana. So.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, that's kind of a bummer because you got to work on the best Blade movie and you would have gotten to work on the best Spider-Man movie. So.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you have no regrets that you did it because it's cool that you got to work at least in that part of the industry. It seems like it would be really cool. Like I've actually, I went to college in Evansville where I live now, and I had a psychology class with a guy a couple of times, and we got to talking one time, and he actually helped build the roof toilet for Scrubs. Like he worked in the prop department as well, and it's just kind of a weird, like, you don't think when you watch the shows, you don't think, oh, somebody actually had to build that thing, and then you meet the person that actually got to help build it. It's pretty cool. I think he was a little freaked out at how cool I thought it was, because he just built a toilet. But I was picking his brain for a while about that.
Do you build a toilet, or do you just go buy a toilet and put it on the roof?
I don't know if it was actually a functioning toilet, though.
I would hope not.
Well, it depends. Is how much does the roof weigh? Does that spot, would that be able to hold a porcelain commode, or does he have to build one out of foam core?
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, that's true. I do want to unwrap something you said, though, Pat, just like one off, but I want your opinion on it, too. You said Spider-Man 2 was the best Spider-Man movie. Do you?
I mean the original trilogy.
So do you like Homecoming better?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Like, we didn't have to end the podcast.
No comment.
Yeah. Did you not like Homecoming? Is that the no comment?
It was not the strongest Spider-Man film, in my opinion. But
really? What about it?
There was just some... And I did a rant with our friend Matt Hurt on the Obsessive Viewer stuff.
So nobody listened to that.
Yeah, well, I didn't do it on his podcast, just on his Facebook. Okay. I did a rant at the time, and I haven't watched the film in so long, I can't remember what it was. There was a few things that struck me off character, just as someone that grew up reading Spider-Man and all that. But
I actually thought it was one of the closer
it was like
interpretations.
It was good. It was a good movie. Don't get me wrong. I really enjoyed it. And you know what? When looking at the other ones, it's probably the best. One of the best of them, like up there with Spider-Man 2. But there's just some things that struck me as a bit off.
So the thing that bothers me about that movie, and the number one thing, is Spider-Man's from Midtown. They clearly established that. A school from Midtown goes to Washington, D.C. A person from that group goes missing, and then Spider-Man shows up. Nobody puts that together.
And they're the gifted and talented students.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't even necessarily bother me that the students don't put it together, but that teacher better put it together.
That teacher looked like he might have been smoking away some brain cells, okay?
Martin Starr. Yeah.
So, cool. So I have a similar problem with Spider-Man in Infinity War, which is they're on the bus, he jumps out of the bus, and there's other people in cars on that bridge, and he has a Spider-Man mask on. He's clearly coming from a bus from Midtown. Somebody puts that together, right?
Does nobody on that bus notice that Peter's missing?
That's true.
And they just watch
They don't
Spider-Man
follow up on the bus.
swing away?
Everybody's watching the spaceship.
I feel like there's going to be a Dark Knight moment. Somebody from that bridge is going to eventually come and be like, I know who Spider-Man is.
Everybody was watching the spaceship.
That's true, but I feel like the cab right behind the bus was probably watching the bus a little bit too.
Was the cab driven by Stan Lee? No. Everybody was watching the spaceship.
Because the bus was driven by Stan Lee. So how'd you feel about Infinity War? I'm just curious.
It was enjoyable. I was not emotionally prepared.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I am definitely someone that wears his emotions very close to the surface. I am not afraid to cry. You're giving me a look. I am not afraid to cry, and there were tears in that theater because, you know what? Honestly, your brain thinks, everything is going to be okay because it's a comic book movie.
Yeah.
But you're seeing the actors' portrayals of what's happening, and it's heartbreaking. So,
yeah, I feel like. And maybe it's just because I'm super jaded about it. It's like we know that they're working on multiple movies.
Oh yeah,
and I still don't think we're in a place that we could spoil it, especially in a live event like this. But there are certain people in that movie that die that we know that they're working on sequels for. So at the time, even when I was watching it, I was like, okay, how are they going to bring these people back?
And like I said, logical brain says that.
Yeah.
But when you're watching that performance on the screen, they did a really good job.
Yeah.
So,
oh yeah, I saw that movie I think 3 or 4 times in theaters. We just saw a story last night while we were sitting in the hotel that somebody has seen it 43 times.
I have seen that. Yes,
it hasn't even been out for 43 days. I mean, I love that movie. It is phenomenal. It's one of my favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, but I think it's actually number 2 because I recently just rewatched all of them so I could have an updated ranking. I think it ended up being number 2. I love that movie, but I don't know if I could watch it for 3 hours 43 times. That's a little intense for me, especially when you know that there's another one coming so quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, the turnaround on that movie is going to be, we're going to see it next year. Maybe I could see going to see that movie quite a few times because we know that's going to be really the end of this phase.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I could watch that movie 43 times. That's a little intense for me.
But it's also got me interested to see how they're going to tie in Ant-Man and the Wasp, how they're going to tie in the Captain Marvel film next March.
See, that's the thing that has always kind of bothered me about these movies, and I know, the logical person in me knows how it gets made, and that it takes years for these things to get made, and casting choices get made years after they've already made some of these movies. But it just seems like with the stinger and him calling Captain Marvel, there's things that's been happening since then that is pretty serious. At what point, I know that they are just now making Captain Marvel, and that's the reason he's calling her. But, it feels like there's been stuff that's been just as important, and he hasn't called Captain Marvel, so I feel like there's some plot holes there. And I know the logical person in me is just screaming and saying, well, they haven't cast Captain Marvel and all that good stuff, but it seems like a very weird ending to that movie.
I'm not going to say any more because, once again, it's probably legitimately okay to talk spoilers at this point, and especially around this crowd, but I don't want to take any chances.
I was sitting here thinking, I'm glad that we're not going to spoil anything, and then he's just giving away the complete stinger after the movie, so...
It'll be all right.
You should feel terrible, Pat.
I'm not going to feel terrible about it.
All right. So I would be kicking myself if we didn't go back and talk a little bit more about your time with Disney.
Okay.
Because, previously mentioned, I'm a huge Disney nerd. I know you worked at Disneyland then, right?
Correct, the mother park.
Okay. And then you've been to Disney World before, or no?
The last time I was at Disney World, they were breaking the ground at Animal Kingdom. Okay. So it was in January of 1996.
So my first time going to Disney World was, I think, 1997. It was right before Animal Kingdom opened.
So your first time going to Disney World, by that point I had been 3 times. I had been there in 1983, I'd been there in 1993, and I'd been there in 1996.
So I don't know that we could have a fair conversation then around which park is better, because it's been 22 years, I guess, since you've been. But from what you remember, what is the difference, from a culture standpoint, between World and Land?
Well, when it comes to culture, I really don't know much difference because Disney prides themselves in having a culture that is the same in Anaheim, Orlando, the store you visit in Boise, Idaho, wherever.
Yep.
But when it comes to the actual parks, Disneyland is about the size of Kings Island. Mm-hmm. Or, comparison, just the Magic Kingdom at Disney World.
Yep.
If you've looked anything into Disney, they built Disneyland, everything propped up around it, so they decided to buy all this land in Orlando and build there so they could grow however they wanted. Disneyland is very small, but it's the original. That is, if you're really into Disney, that's where Walt walked. When I worked the Finding Nemo submarine voyage, which in its original incarnation is just a submarine voyage.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, right?
That was Disney World.
Gotcha.
Disneyland was only a submarine voyage.
Okay.
And that was one of the original e-ticket attractions that opened up in 1959. Yes, I actually did research on my attraction while I was doing it. But they opened up the same time as the Matterhorn and the monorail. They were the original e-ticket attractions.
Yep.
Other submarines have been renamed through the years. They were able to keep track of which sub was which. But Nautilus, the lead sub, had always been the lead submarine. So whenever I drove Nautilus, I was driving the one you saw on the newsreels in 1959 being christened by the Navy, that had Waltz, that had all these important people in it. That's the one I was driving. You know, Walt's apartment is there on property. You know, it's a lot of the original attractions. They keep a lot of this stuff around, and you talk to some longtime cast members, they can tell you, you know, through refurb after refurb, this is still original. So you're running into a lot of that. I never saw any of that at Disney World because I didn't actually work there.
Yeah.
But I'm sure Disney World probably has some similar stuff. But there's a sense of pride at the Anaheim Park because it is the original.
Yeah, and you kind of answered my next question was if you buy into this is where Walt worked and lived and slept or whatever, and it sounds like you do. I guess my issue is, so like my wife and I go on a Disney trip almost every year, and for me it's like, do we go out to Disneyland or do we go to the place where it's like a resort and there's 4 parks and there's just a ton? And
Disneyland is great if you're visiting Southern California and you want to spend a day or two at the parks.
Yeah.
It used to be you could spend a couple hours at California Adventure, then head over to Disneyland. I haven't been out there since they opened up Cars Land and all that, but I guess California Adventure has gotten a lot more, where you can spend most of a day there. So you spend a day there and then you spend a day at Disneyland.
Yeah.
But then you hit Universal Studios over at Universal City. You hit Knott's Berry Farm just right down the road from Disneyland. That, sure, it's been taken over by Cedar Fair, the same company that owns Cedar Point and Kings Island now and all that.
Yeah.
But it still has a lot of the original Knott's Berry Farm, where it was like the friendly competitor with Walt Disney and Disneyland.
yeah,
So,
I mean, at some point I'm going to have to set up a pilgrimage out there and do that. But every year it's just like it's easier to go to Walt Disney World because we're on this side of the country, but then there's just so much to do there.
oh, you can spend a week and not see everything.
Correct. So it's quite the experience. But I mean, at some point you'd have to go do the original, right? So that's definitely on my radar. You said that you also worked at Buzz Lightyear's
Astro Blasters. They have a
okay,
similar
yeah.
attraction at Disney World. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much close to the same thing. They actually have that, and then at Hollywood Studios they have Toy Story Mania, which they're both kind of competitive.
The Toy Story
Right.
Mania is the next step up.
Yeah.
I remember being part of the testing crew. Like, I didn't actually work it. They would give cast members
Yeah.
free tickets as they're working out the bugs. So I
Yeah.
was part of the testing crew for that over at California Adventure.
Yeah, so I pride myself that every time my wife and I go on Toy Story Mania that I win because it's a game of skill, and I'm a very skilled person, obviously. No, it's a joke. But she always wins at Astro Blasters, and I don't know why. I don't know if she just does. So
Does she know where the secret target is in Zurg's chest that's not marked but gets you like 10,000 points?
No, but I looked that up, and I found out, and now she doesn't beat me anymore. But does that carry over to Disneyland as well? Are there like the secret targets and like the 100,000 point targets?
Yes, there are.
Gotcha.
And when you work the attraction, you're told exactly where each of those targets are.
Oh, yeah.
And so then you bring friends on there, and they have no idea how your score is higher than theirs, and you just don't tell them because you're a horrible person.
So I mean, I really obviously buy into like the cast member aspect of working at Disney, and I've like read through Ask Me Anythings of cast members, and so do you have like any crazy stories from your time working there or anything that sticks out?
Two incidents. One was a kind of a poor guest experience.
Okay.
When I was working there, it was the second year the submarines were open. And we were talking 90 to 120 minute wait times to get into this attraction. Lines going all the way back to It's a Small World. We would allow people to leave the line, bring their kid to the bathroom, come back, so on and so forth. I'm working crowd control, and I hear someone arguing with someone that's like just out of high school that's having to work this point. I go over there. There's a party of 18 trying to join the party of 2.
Oh my God.
That waited in line. And I go over there and I explain the policy to them, and they're like, well, that's expletive deleted. You expect us to wait this long in line. And I gesture to the entire line. I go, they all did.
Yeah.
And they're swearing at me. They are saying they're going to go to City Hall. They're going to file a complaint. And I did the whole retail, hands behind the back, feet at about shoulder width. And I'm just like, fine, my name is Tony. There are currently 3 Tonys here, so make sure you say it's the older Tony, the one that's wearing the hat. In fact, tell you what, you go ahead, you go to City Hall. I'm going to go to our office once I know you're out of my area because you're not getting on this attraction anymore. And I'm going to call City Hall, let them know that you're coming. And they storm off, and it doesn't help that at this point everybody else in line is laughing and applauding because I'm not letting 18 people cut in line in front of them. And I go to the office, and the lead's like, why didn't you call me? And I go, because if I called you, they would have shoved through on the other guy, and how would you have handled it? And he goes, probably not as well as you did.
Yeah. Happiest place on earth.
Yeah. But then I'm working at Payless Shoes here in Indianapolis over on 86th near Michigan. At this point, I've got longer, shaggy hair. I haven't shaved in about 3 weeks, and I'm helping a mother and daughter out buying shoes. And they're trying to figure out how they know me. And it's like, I've worked so much retail, we're starting to go over, all the shops. And we're just like, no, we're not from the area. So we forget about it until I ring them up, and it's like, okay, can I have your phone number just, for the records things? What, for some reason I can't remember why they do it. They're like, sure, it's 714, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, time out. 714, you're from the Anaheim area.
Huh.
And they look at me like, what sort of person is this that has all the area codes memorized?
You're like Rain Man.
And I'm like, no, stop me if you've heard this one. Right this way, explorers. Welcome over to the Nautilus. Please watch your head and step on your way down the stairs. If you don't watch your head and step, please watch your language. There are little explorers present. Once you get to the bottom of the stairs, please move down to the end of the row, filling in every available seat. If you don't fill in every available seat, come on, we got to fit everybody in. I'm a big guy. I understand. We like our elbow room, but please, let's not be shellfish. Because it's...
Oh, yeah,
I get it.
And
I like punch.
Should have been on Jungle Cruise.
Their jaws drop, and they're like, you're now selling shoes in Indianapolis. And I'm like, how do you remember me from Disneyland?
Yeah.
It's like we had been on your subs 3 times. You've driven twice and you've loaded us in once. You had such a unique spiel. I wanted to be Jungle Cruise, but they couldn't fit me in. So.
Yeah, exactly. That would have fit perfect on Jungle Cruise.
So that was interesting. Like 3 years later, halfway across the country, being recognized as somebody that worked at Disneyland.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, you don't even have the Disney look anymore.
I guess it makes sense, though. I mean, I wouldn't recognize the guy, but like when we went to Universal Studios and we did the Jaws thing, I remember that guy that drove the boat was pretty flamboyant and was pretty into it. So I remember that guy. Like, I remember one of the barrels explode and you have the fire and all that stuff, and a woman screamed and was like, "Oh, it's hot." And he's like, "Yes, ma'am. It's fire. It's hot." Like, he called her out on it. And I thought that was pretty funny. Like, I still remember that to this day. I couldn't pick the guy out or anything like that. So that is kind of a unique story. But, yeah, it's just kind of funny.
Take your Universal stories and get out of here. We're talking about Disney.
I mean, so I think this is the longest that I've ever not talked on the podcast. Because once you guys started talking about Disney, I'm like, I went to Disney when I was in high school. And that was the last time I went.
Missing out, man.
I know. I'm going to go to the Star Wars one next year.
I'm just glad I contributed to this moment.
Yep, Nerds You're Looking For history right here. The longest I have gone without speaking in an episode.
Yeah?
I think my previous record was about 30 seconds. So, I mean, obviously, you're a big Star Wars fan.
Is that a weight comment? Because I've been called Porkins before as an X-Wing pilot, and I'm not real fond of this.
Porkins. So Tyler and I kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say that we necessarily disagreed a ton about Solo, but a lot of people are hating on Solo right now. So I wanted to get your opinion about that movie.
A lot of people are horrible, they are bad, and they should feel bad.
So you liked the movie?
I do not feel it is the best Star Wars, but it was a lot of fun. It was so much fun. I enjoyed it more. I first heard the announcement of Solo, and I'm like, this is not a film we need.
No.
Then I saw the first trailer, and I'm like, this is not a film we need. Then I saw the second trailer, and I'm like, this may not be a film we need, but I think it's a film I'm going to like. And then I went and saw it, and I want to see it again, but I've just been too busy prepping for PopCon.
So I kind of feel very similar to you. I thought, obviously, going into it, I was like, this is not something that we need. We've seen his arc in the original trilogy and Force Awakens is perfect. Like, that's a perfect arc. And so I don't think that we needed any more backstory on it. But I get that he's such a super popular character that this is kind of their big flagship person that they haven't done a solo movie for, pardon the pun.
It's like, Patton Oswalt did a bit when the prequels were coming out about, George Lucas. It's like, well, do you like Boba Fett? Well, in this movie you can see him when he's a little boy.
Yeah.
And it's like, we just love the things we love. We don't need to see where the things we love come from.
Yeah.
But in this case, it worked. In Rogue One, it worked.
Oh, I mean, I absolutely loved Rogue One.
Rogue One's my favorite.
But I always thought that we needed that. Because, I mean, they had that throwaway line that a lot of people have died to...
that was Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, a lot of Bothians died.
Bothians died in Return of the Jedi.
What line am I thinking of then?
You are just wrong and you were bad and you should feel bad.
Okay, that's fine with it. But anyways, I thought that was a big part...
Thanks for calling him out. I really appreciate that.
Tyler was getting pretty close to the microphone, so he was going to do it. But... no, I feel like that was needed because that's a big part of the mythology that we've never seen before. But with Solo, like, I guess, I mean, they've had hints at his backstory, but I don't think you necessarily needed to see it. I was disappointed because I felt like I wanted the film to prove to me that it needed to exist, and I don't think it ever got there for me.
I laughed. I had fun. That was enough reason for that film to exist for me.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm 41 years old. I have quite literally grown up with Star Wars. I was born May 23rd, 1977. It premiered May 25th, 1977. So I have literally grown up with this film franchise. And I've just learned that, you know what? I'm just going to sit. I'm going to love it. And you know what? If I don't like it, I sure as heck ain't going to harass the actors about it.
Well, no. I mean, if you do that, you're a garbage person.
Yeah.
But did you like The Last Jedi then?
I enjoyed The Last Jedi.
Okay. Very cool.
Once again, not my favorite film, but I want to say we saw that twice in the theater. We were able to see it once in IMAX and one in, I think, Dolby Digital.
So my problem, and we were literally just talking about this before while we were walking to our booth here at PopCon. My big problem with that movie is why wouldn't she tell him the plan? It makes no sense to me why she wouldn't tell him the plan.
Why did she have to?
But that's not good enough for me. Like, it would make it easier if she told everyone the plan. There's no reason to keep it secret unless you think that there's a mole, but that's never explained that she thought that would be a possibility. So that's a big plot hole for me. But other than that, I enjoyed the movie.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about it earlier. I feel like Poe ranks high enough to where they could let him in on it and save some problems later.
I mean...
And you base this on one movie? Everybody says he's a hot shot, but you know what?
So I was asking about this earlier. Was his rank captain?
He got demoted. Like, he was a commander, and then he was a captain, or maybe he was a captain.
If he was a captain at one point, wasn't Han Solo a captain at one point? It felt like he led a lot of stuff in those original movies. Like, I feel like he would have been in on the plan, right?
I feel like no matter what your rank is, if you're on that ship, you know the plan. Like, there's no reason to not tell everyone on the ship. But the reason that they don't tell them the plan is because then you could have that little side story with the casino at this other planet that I didn't care about. Yeah, that part I do not care about at all in that movie.
This is not about me.
I still have some issues to work out.
Okay, so let's rein it back in. No. Like, you can listen to our Last Jedi review if you want to hear Pat cry. No, so we do on the podcast every every episode we do, we end it with like what we call a nerd favorite, which is where we take turns, we ask each other like a nerdy question every episode, and it's usually like, what's your favorite blank? But whenever we reviewed Solo, we asked each other, what standalone movie would you like to see in the Star Wars universe? So I know I'm putting you on the spot there, but is there one that you are eager for them to potentially make some point?
I love the pilots. I love, like the character of Wedge Antilles and the more current, the Poes and stuff like that. So I want to see a story about the pilots. That's actually what I was hoping for on Rogue One.
Yeah.
That's not what I got, and I'm okay with that because it was such a fantastic film.
Yeah.
But I want something that has to do with a group of people that you don't know from the movies. So it can be something like Rogue One where you don't know what's going to end up with those characters.
Do you think that you would have liked Rogue One as much if Vader wasn't in it?
Yes.
Okay.
That was that scene and the very ending scene with Leia. Those were very, very strong scenes. But everything that led up to that point, the Leia and the Vader didn't make me care that Jyn and Cassian, went out in a flash.
Yeah.
At the very end, it didn't make me, sad when Baze and Sharut went out. Those characters didn't make me care about that. Those characters, made me care about that. So
that's fair. I think that's maybe why people are having a hard time digesting Solo, is because it's probably the movie that's come out that's tied in the least amount to the original trilogy. I mean, obviously you have Solo and Chewbacca, and that's a huge deal, but it doesn't lead right up to A New Hope like Rogue One did. So I think that people are having a hard time digesting that. There
are those great fan edits out there that cut off with Vader watching the Tantive go off, Leia saying Hope, and then to cut right into the Tantive being chased by the Star Destroyer.
You
can watch. We watched Rogue One, came home, watched A New Hope, despecialized, and that worked very, very well.
Yeah, I mean, the last 10 minutes of that movie are a roller coaster, and you leave the theater happy because of that final shot of Leia, and Solo didn't have something like that.
But Solo still, like I said, was a lot of fun. They spent more time in the mall than they probably should have.
Yeah,
the whole Kessel Run thing, I think they focused on a little bit too much. But some of the little subtle nods and some of the little points, like the droid, and like I said, I've only seen it once, so I can't remember. I remember her name looked a lot like Elite, so it's like what, L33T or something like that.
Yeah, Lando calls her L3.
Yeah. So. Her being uploaded to the Falcon, and then 3PO and Empire saying the ship has a very peculiar dialect.
Or
something like that. So some of those little ties that seem pretty cool. But
without spoiling anything, how do you feel about the tie into the prequels? How did you react when you first saw that?
I am not caught up with Clone Wars. I am not caught up with Rebels. Once I'm caught up with those, I feel that I might actually have an opinion. But I think it's from my understanding, it ties in with those more.
Yes.
So until I see those all the way. And Disney, let's get on getting those where I can legally find them streaming, because as much as I like giving you money, I have only so much.
For sure.
So I would really rather stream them and not have to buy them on Blu-ray. But it is what it is.
Yeah, see, I've heard that it ties into the character that we know from those shows, but still I feel like it was a stretch. Like, I felt like they needed, because they kept the identity mysterious the whole movie, I felt like they needed it to be a big character, and there's only so many big characters that you know it's going to be, and so when I saw who it was, I was just like, I didn't really care that much.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it when we reviewed it. I kind of felt that way at first, but then whenever I did more research around the characters' background on like Clone Wars and Rebels, it makes a lot of sense.
For sure. All right, so I think we're at 2:45 right now, so I think that's it for this episode of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast. Real quick, Tony, where can we find you on Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff?
Well, as I said before, my name is Tony Troxel. You can find me online at geekinginindiana.com. You can find me on Twitter, where for the last 3 years I've been one of the top 3 Twitter feeds as voted by readers of Nouveau magazine. Lamest humble brag ever.
I thought you just made that up.
You can find me on Twitter at indianageeking.com. You can also find me on Facebook by searching for Geeking in Indiana.
All right, thank you. It's been a pleasure having you on. As always, we enjoyed talking to you, so it was cool that you finally got on our podcast. As always, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. Twitter and Instagram are both at The Nerds Podcast. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Google+, vote for us for Podcast of the Month at podcastland.com. If you're at Indy, for those that are here, you can find us at booth 1130. And as always, my name is Patrick Kuhn.
Tyler Hunt.
And we are The Nerds You're Looking For. Take it easy, guys.
Later, guys.